There'll always be a backdoor in every system. I feel like everyone has to, like, they're building something. It's like, I got to leave myself a backdoor in case.
Bitcoin, crypto,
Ethereum, crypto assets,
NFT.
Welcome to Not Another Crypto Show. Welcome to Not Another Crypto Show with me, your host, Jason Allan Scott, and your other host,
Fiona Chow.
Unfortunately, you haven't heard much of Fiona this season because it has been the crypto winter, and she is a crypto summer kind of lass. Or at least that's the way it seems. Where have you been?
I have been in the midst of home buying, mortgage hell, and child with a broken wrist, half-term holidays, all that kind of fun. I have been trying to get some shows recorded and had people bailing left, right, and centre. Probably because of the crypto winter, the message maybe is not quite as positive as it should be.
I think that's one of the big things that we've seen, right? I think when things were all rosy, everyone wanted to talk. And now that things aren't, people are a bit nervous about the messages they're sending out there. They're like, well, if we say nothing, then at least people get to make up their own minds, versus if we solidify their fears or we say something that we can't back up, in a year or 2 years' time. And it reminds me of a great quote by Warren Buffett, who said, when the tide pulls back, you realize how many people were skinny dipping.
That's a good line. But I feel like if not now, then when? I feel like when the chips are down, people who are genuinely kind of like, advocates for crypto should be coming out to defend it. So we've seen some stuff coming out from Binance, like arguably Binance may have triggered the recent events. That's a subject we'll talk about later. But I feel like we need the champions of the industry to come forward now. I 100% agree. I'm doing a talk tomorrow, so it'll be a week back by the time this goes live at Eventech Live. And they want me to talk about Web3. Is it dead? And I thought, wow, that's a hell of a subject. Is Web3 dead? Is crypto non-existent? Has everything fallen out of its butt? And I was like no. At every single cycle of every single innovation, there's been an opportunity where people have gone, it no longer works. Let's just give up on it. But it is, like you said, it's the champions, it's the builders that now more than ever need to stand up and say, this is what I'm building. This is the problem. The problem still exists, and we're still trying to solve it with this technology. And we talked about this boom and bust cycle back in the first episode we ever did, which is that crypto is kind of heading for its winter. We have done it in a much quicker timescale than traditional finance, but crypto as an industry moves much quicker than traditional finance. So you'd expect these peaks and troughs to be more dramatic and be more frequent.
And has that been your experience through your period in crypto? Because you weren't always in crypto. You weren't always the PR queen of crypto. Was this, since you've joined, has it been this kind of sort of boom, bust, boom, bust, boom, bust?
I think it has. I think projects have kind of, at the start, accelerated really quickly, got a lot of momentum, and then have died away. I can't think of a single project I saw or was involved in 2017 that was still around in the same shape and form.
Throughout this period, since 2017, when I first got into this, and the first podcast, right, which was Not Another Crypto Podcast, which was sold to a fintech company, which interestingly, I haven't heard a single thing from since, since the winter started. All of a sudden, all our investment meetings were gone. We're opening in LATAM, and we're doing this, and da-da-da. And I won't mention you guys, I'm not going to name and shame you, but if you are listening, I do expect some sort of investor meeting to find out what the hell is going on. And I have thought there is something in this. There is magic in the water. You can tell there is something happening. And I don't think that's gone. I don't think that just because there are a couple of bad players, which there have been since this started, let's be honest about it, changes the narrative which everyone is behind. The idea that it's for the people, by the people, for a better future than we currently have right now. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think I've always been more of a cynic about crypto than you. I see lots of positives in the technology and a lot of negatives in some of the personalities that have been driving it, right? And I think that is kind of what needs to recalibrate if crypto is going to survive this winter or ice age, as somebody's described it. Same as we talked about the ICO boom and bust back in 2018. What rose from that is instead of these ICO Wild West gold rushes, it was more about what's the underpinning technology and what is the problem they're trying to solve. And if they have a use case for that, then there is an investable product there. If it's just shilling a token, there's nothing behind that. And I think people are realizing that, scales are falling from the eyes a bit.
I like that. I like both the ice age and the scaling falling from the eyes. Lovely imagery for those people listening and not watching. If you're watching, you get to see Fiona's smile because we're using brand new technologies. Thank you, Riverside FM, for providing it. And thank you, Jeff, of course, our editor, who's done a phenomenal job to step in where Fiona has not had the opportunity to create episodes like the one we did on BlackRock, with a follow-up he did on BlackRock, which were both absolutely brilliant, not to mention helping us with last week's Look into the Past with an episode I did 3 years ago, and then Where Are We Now? And I think that segues beautifully into what has happened in the last couple of days in the world of three little letters. And it's not WTF, even though it probably should be. It's FTX.
What the FTX has happened.
Oh, I like that. Jeff, that's your title right there. What the FTX is going on. That
it's
is
almost
it.
like a leadership for a living, right?
Yeah, it's almost like this is what you should be doing. Now, you're probably wondering, what is it? If you don't know, then you're under a rock and you probably shouldn't be listening to this podcast. But I'd like to think that you should be listening to this podcast. So that's the whole point of this podcast, is that we educate and entertain. And this is not financial advice, nor anything always saying. It's the hopes that you invest in any of the projects that we talk about. However, here's a project that you probably shouldn't invest in. You've heard about the $600 million hack. You've heard about the private jet bound for Argentina. Well, buckle up, because there's so much more to the story. But I think maybe we take it back a moment, right? It's Friday night. You're sitting on the couch, your popcorn, and I've got a visual representation again for those people who are watching this on the YouTube. We have a YouTube channel now. Yes, we did that. Your popcorn is finished popping. Jeff, enter sounds of popcorn. And you're getting ready to watch your favorite Lethal Weapon series. I mean, it's that kind of mood right now. It's that kind of time. You got to get angry. You got to fight back. You can't be broken down. You can't be living in a trailer with your dog. And then the messages start on your phone. Ping, 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 ping. And you start opening them. And there it is on your Telegram, on your Discord, on your WhatsApp, on your Twitter. It's FTX is going nuts. FTX funds are moving from wallets. Something is going on. 30 million's missing. 50 million's missing. Dude, 60 million's missing. Did you hear about this thing with El Camida? Oh my God, what's happening now? And it just seems like we're in the middle of a car chase that is greater than anything we could have seen on Lethal Weapon. And that says a lot, because Lethal Weapon was made by some incredible people who really understood international action.
That's the whole of the show. We need to debate that.
We have to do a whole separate 100%. Now, don't get me wrong. I am no CoffeeZilla. I'm not an internet detective. My job is not to bring out the scams or explain the scam artists behind them. But what we do know is that FTX was hacked for a bunch of funds. We do know that FTX users are reporting that their wallets and balances are showing up as zero. We do know that the FTX apps were hacked according to everyone in the world right now. And P.S., if you still have them, delete them. The site got hacked. But here's the thing, right? The hacker had access to everything. The wallets, the apps, the websites. Now, I have watched Oceans 10, 11, 12, and 13. And I'm not saying inside job, but I'm saying it would be easier if it was an inside job, wouldn't it? And I want to go one step further, which is Samuel's on the run. He didn't look like someone who did run or had ever run. And that is not fat shaming at all. He just seemed like someone that was quite domiciled behind his computer. And yet, we have someone online who has hacked him and has had I think it's yzy.eth or at Little Moon Lambo, who's been tracking his plane to Argentina, which is absolutely nutsoid. This is a guy that supposedly only drove a Toyota Corolla. And yet the hack happens. A plane is flown from the Bahamas to Argentina at the exact same time. Maybe right now there is an event that I should be organizing called the Fraudulent Four, with Samuel, Duquan, Su Zhu, and Kyle Davies just hanging out, talking about who did the biggest FU to the entire community and talking about FUs and things that happen in the back door. There was obviously a back door built into the exchange. Otherwise, how could this have all happened so easily? And it does seem to have been easily. And the worst part is that since then, our good friend, SBF, he's been, sending these really weird tweets. Like he sent one that was just the. Oh, sorry, his first one was what? His second one was a. His next one was the. And everyone's wondering, is he going to say, what a fucking shit show? Apologies for language, but it's that kind of time. Like, it's just been mental. And the kind of stories that have come out of it. Let's not forget, we've had stories of theft. We've had stories of manipulation, of market manipulation. He's admitted in an interview that they've recently brought out. Forbes did a great article about this, where he said it's basically a black box where the more money you put in, the more money seems to come out. And then the interviewer says something like, well, it sounds to me like a Ponzi. And he goes, well, it is a Ponzi. And yet there were no other red flags. And then when you speak to the biggest investors that were behind him, Sequoia, etc., well, they all had FOMO. They didn't want to miss out on this opportunity. But they also admit that when they asked him questions around the technology and the idea, he would just say, well, if you keep asking me questions, I'm going to get someone else to invest. So they didn't invest, which reminds me a lot of Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos. Now, then the employees, right? When the boat is sinking, the rats are running. They all start jumping up and down. Yes, he was a vegan, but he wasn't a vegan to some drugs. He was on incredible stimulants, apparently. He even sent out a message to his entire team back in 2019, and he put this out as a tweet, if you want to look it up, where he said, A, stimulants when you wake up, sleeping pills if you need them when you sleep. B, be mindful of where your headspace is. I often nap in the office so that my mind doesn't leave work mode in between shifts. This doesn't sound like someone that was in full, behavior of someone who's supposed to be running a billion-dollar company, someone that's in line to make the best decisions at all times. And even if you look at his before picture and after picture sort of recently, there's definitely some clues that things weren't great at the time. And of course, talking about people who are not great, we've got Elon Musk, who had to jump in on this whole thing, who said that, that he set off my BS detector back when he told me he had $3 billion. And when it comes to BS, Mr. Musk knows a lot about that. And that's it, right? My apologies. How can I talk about FTX and not talk about the Alameda executives who knew everything? In fact, it was the Alameda CEO, Carolina Ellison, who was apparently having, liaisons, if you will, with Mr. Bankman-Fried. And there's stories about other people in that exact period having liaisons with Mr. Fried. None of this sounds good to me. I mean, the only thing that I think is hilarious is that someone put up a page on Pornhub that said man has sex with 5 million people, leaving them all unsatisfied, which I thought was really, really smart as a meme. But outside of that, it's pretty awful. I'd love to have your take. I'd love to know, how did this come about? How did it get to this? I'm going to leave this over to Fiona.
I think you're missing the obvious thing about how he doesn't look like a guy who could do this. He's obviously Scooby-Doo, right? He's going to whip off that face mask, and under that would be like Mark Zuckerberg or somebody like this whole FU from his plane in Argentina. That is the obvious answer there. As to how this all came about, yeah, it kind of feels a bit like crypto bros kind of turning on each other, because I think this originated from Binance announcing it was going to offload a shit ton of the FTX tokens because of irregularities, or however he said it, and then very quickly turned to, we're going to bail them out. Actually, we're not going to bail them out. And so then we had this $8 billion hole in the asset sheet, etc. And then all these, like you said, the rats come running out the sinking ship. So it feels like some strings were being pulled. The crypto bros kind of fell out. This kind of conspiracy of silence, of all supporting each other, broke down somewhere. And then we see this kind of free fall coming out. It's fascinating to look at the communications that were coming out, not just from FTX, but from the other big exchanges, including the biggest, and other kind of stakeholders in the ecosystem, if we put it that way. And then how quiet the FTX celebrity ambassadors have been since.
You talk about players and the celebrities that back this up that have now gone incredibly quiet. And it's funny because the lawyers, and I wouldn't call them celebrities, but they're kind of celebrity lawyers. But the lawyers that have been pulled in to help with this are actually the same lawyers that helped with the Enron scandal back in the day. And if you look at Enron's website, you go to their terms and conditions, or sorry, not their terms and conditions, they're like a mission statement of what we're about. And you go back to Enron's, they've got the exact same line. Enron had a line that said, Enron Online becomes a system for traders designed by traders, where FTX said, FTX is a cryptocurrency exchange built by traders for traders. And I was like, are they like the Better Call Saul of scam companies? Like, hold on, if you got a scam company, you're going down, this is the company to call. But, you got to put certain things in your code, or at least in your website, so that they know that you know that they know what's going on here. So they're not invested in your company. And we talk about people that knew and should have known, etc., etc. There were these back doors built into the way the whole thing works. There were these loopholes on like how to withdraw money, how to get money out when everything shuts it down. That doesn't sound to me like someone who's building something for the long term, does it? Like
I think that's just the coder's default, though. There'll always be a backdoor on every system. I feel like everyone has to, like, they're building something. It's like, I got to leave myself a backdoor in case. Like, I think any coder, any developer who builds anything builds a backdoor for themselves. I just think you see that in any build.
Okay, so we're gonna give him that one. We're gonna say that every coder, every builder has to have a backdoor so they can go in and fix things when things go wrong. Not that it was a shady first move advantage. The next thing that we have to discuss, of course, is the CEO of Alameda. Now, there's so much to be said about this. If you watch again some of her interviews where she talks about not knowing what the heck's going on, how it's up and down, but she thinks it's hysterical and she's loving it and she doesn't care. It's all just a game. How did that happen? That seems like a weird circumstance.
Well, she's the Wilma. She's the Wilma of the Scooby-Doo gang, right? She's actually the smart one. Like, she sees through all of this. I feel like she's got a bigger part to play in this than has perhaps been credited to her at the moment.
And what about the government piece? The fact that he invested so massively into the current government that stands. He was the single biggest investor of Biden's presidential route to presidentship.
But he also sponsored, what's the word I'm thinking of, donated to Republican campaigns as well. Like, everybody does that in the States. They always kind of, leverage their odds across both. So I suspect there's probably more Republican donations than we perhaps see on the surface. So I don't read that as anything in particular, because I think big business, if you call it, has always invested on both sides of the house.
Very interesting. I like that. I will do some research into that, and we'll do a follow-up episode on who invests in what and why. What's the big thinking around it? Talking about big thinking, the guy that wrote The Big Short is 6 months into writing The Big Short 2, which will be all about Sam Bankman-Fried. Is it Fried or Fried? I want to say Fried.
I think it's Fried.
Is it Fried? Okay, it's spelled Fried for those people that want to look this up. And
we could ask him. Let's get him on the show next time.
If you're out there in the Bahamas right now and you're thinking, what should I do next? We'd love to have you on Not Another Crypto Show. And I personally will donate $100,000 to your staff, or to your favorite charity that isn't connected to you somehow, or someone you're dating or sleeping with. The next question I have for you is the question about Game of Thrones. And we've kind of referenced Game of Thrones a lot in this episode because of the winter is coming and the crypto winter and etc. But there is a conversation right now that potentially the head of Binance is the smartest manipulator of players in the history of the world because of the way this all unfolded. Because of his accidental tweet to say, I hope you enjoy your holiday, wherever he was, that he wasn't supposed to be at the time, that immediately set off the first alarms that started this avalanche, again, going with the snow theme, that has led to this moment where they have just stepped in as the winner as well, and the victor and the savior to the entire audience around it. What are your feelings around Mr. Binance?
I mean, the timing is just so auspicious, right? There was that CoinDesk Tone Telegraph piece on the Friday saying, alerting people to this potential issue, closely followed by the tweet from Binance, closely followed by everything kind of this rolling momentum. But I think what's interesting is that Binance seems to be in some ways in a similar position in that it holds a lot of its own tokens and its assets, which is exactly the problem that they identified with FTX. So I don't necessarily think they're immune from the effects of negativity in the market, but I do think they have a plan and strategy for riding it out. I think there was always the problem with SBF was he pushed heavy on more regulation, more scrutiny, etc., which I think a lot of people in crypto don't want.
Yeah, that's true. That's 100% true. And CZ who's the founder of Binance, for those who don't know, did send an email out to his team a while back. And it's a long email. You can find it if you Google it. But basically, the summary of it was that there was no genius master plan. Of course, a genius master planner would say that. 2, He said FTX going down is not a win, inverted commas, for Binance, but it's really bad for the whole industry. He also said customer confidence is severely shaken from this, and regulators would never forget this moment. That employees should not sell their bags, which I'm assuming means insider trading, to not comment on the sale, that there's enough info out there, in fact, to not comment on anything around this, and to never use a token you created as collateral. And I think that last point is the key one, right? It's the same problem that sank Luna in the end.
The magic money tree.
The magic money tree. I like that. Can you expand on that?
Well, I know we remember back in the UK government about 6 or 7 million prime ministers ago talking about how there wasn't a magic money tree and that money couldn't come from anywhere, from nowhere. And I feel like, in crypto sometimes, especially with tokens, it seems to create this magic money tree that is actually very shallow when you look at it. It has no roots, effectively, and that's what happened. Then maybe, following on so I'm actually well into this Scooby-Doo conspiracy now. I think CZ might just pull off the mask and you see like SBF under that. Wouldn't that be like a master move?
That would be the ultimate master move. If he is behind the whole thing the whole time, making himself both the hero, the villain, the genius, and the corrupted. I like that. I like that a lot. I'm definitely up for that being the answer.
Someone call Marvel as a franchise in this.
Call Marvel now. And may I also make a suggestion? Can you make Jonah Hill as Sam in the casting? Because I just think that would be brilliant, both for the way they look a little like, and the fact that they're both hysterically funny.
That should be CZ.
Oh,
just
yes.
So it's not obviously him.
No, obviously, exactly. You can't have that. I absolutely love that. If you do get a chance, listen to our episode, those that are listening, about the banks and how banks are to this day still a financial money tree and actually are completely made up on the spot. We're going to end this episode, but I wanted to, before we close down on the FTX, firstly, we'd love to know what your feedback. Obviously, by the time this goes out, we imagine there'll be more chapters to the story as they go out. But we'd love to have your feedback. We'd love to have what you think of the FTX, what's going on. But we also want to take a short moment to say this is the end of this season. We're going to be bringing you lots of stuff in the next season. Super excited. Obviously, this season we focused a lot on gaming. We didn't focus much on crypto. We didn't focus on digital assets, although that was something we were going to do. But gaming was really blowing up, and it had the excitement of the people, and we serve you, the people. Fiona, what were your favorite episodes from this season?
Oh, gosh. I mean, so many. I don't know. Come back to me on that one. I'm blanking.
No problem at all. I had so many. Like Una from Change Finance was an absolute brilliant. She's actually going to come back in the next season. We already talked about how that's going to be. We've got something really special planned with her. Maya Protocol was incredible. Talking about how that works and why that works. I like to call it space mechs because I think that whole opportunity is going to the moon, and I'm very excited about where it goes and how it works, considering the founders and considering their story behind that. I loved, of course, Connor, who brought this gravitas about Web3 and really brought it back to sort of not being funny and not being comical, but being really serious and really important. And of course, we talked about his book, which I think was called The Blockchain Handbook.
The Blockchain Innovators Handbook.
Thank you very much, Fiona. And that is available. In fact, if you comment anything on our review page and you get chosen, I will send you the book for free. I bought a bunch of copies. In fact, if you're looking at YouTube, right now, you'll see me lifting up one of my copies, which is always close at hand. He also has a fantastic podcast. If you get a chance, it's called Web3 Innovators, which Connor runs. It's very different to this show, where this show is all about entertaining first, informing second, and about sort of taking it back to the beginnings of things. He's way up there. It's very enterprise focused, but it's incredibly smart. And if you do find yourself wanting a lot more information about niche opportunities, that is the show to follow. We had John Williams as well, who was brilliant, talking about gaming and how incredible his gaming systems was, which led us beautifully into Chris with Mirror World and leaving ByteDance, which is now TikTok, and talking about the growth of play to earn and the opportunities within that and how we should be gamifying everything. We had our first ever influencer, which was wonderful in this space right in the beginning of the season, Kelly. I feel like it's been to be honest, I think it's been the best season we've ever done, even though we haven't had enough from you, in all fairness. But we've had incredible
I would have just
guests,
brought the quality down. The average would have come right down.
There's not even a question. Next season, you're going to be dominating. We've had, Jeff explain BlackRock, which is something a lot of people were asking about, which I'm glad we took a time to. We explained banking, which was still one of the most requested episodes we've done. People saying, can't believe I didn't understand how banking worked. And I want to do more of that in the next season. But if you have ideas as well, please reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, Jason Allan Scott. Obviously, I want everything. Jason Allan Scott, 2 L's and an A and an N, not E-N. I'm not French. And Fiona, of course, is easy to find because she's normally on the Twitter sphere, as far as I found.
But who would you like to see in the next season? Like, what kind of sectors do you want to cover? We always talk about, we always call out for great guests, but I think we also need to maybe touch on which topics we'd like to explore.
I'd like that. I would like to talk about opportunities. I think the reason we started the show was to give opportunities to everyday folk, right? So they didn't say, I missed out again. I missed out on the .com. I missed out on the NFT. I missed out. I'd like to talk about how people start. I'd love to talk to some educational facilities and operators. I'd love to talk to more established businesses, if you will. So we're not kind of in the startup, but maybe in the scale up or enterprise. I think that would be really interesting. The IBMs, what are they doing with the blockchain? I'd love to talk to someone from Meta. I'd love to talk about Apple. Apple's about to get into the space in a big way. And if we think about my favorite things like podcasting, until Apple was in it, it wasn't a thing. Apple came in and became a thing. Headphones weren't a big deal until Apple came in. Laptops weren't a big deal until Apple came in. I think Apple coming in would be massive, and I'd love to do an interview with them. What about yourself?
I got a hankering for something space related. I'm not exactly sure what that would be right now, but I feel like, if all these billionaires are going up to space in rockets, how do the ordinary people get in on that? Like, is there an opportunity for some kind of token raise around, the first crypto space flight, something like that? And I feel Earth is kind of sinking into a cesspool, so maybe we want to look at options off this planet.
Thanks for that. So I'm definitely going to be here until it goes down. I'll be polishing the brass on the Titanic, so to speak. Well, listen, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you, the listeners, very much for joining us. This has been one of our biggest seasons ever. I think we're close to 50,000 unique downloads, which is 50,000 of you unique, non-fungible humans listening to the show, adding your opinions. We've got over 200 5-star reviews now, which is unbelievable. So if you're listening right now and you haven't given us 5 stars, please do. We'll work for it. I promise. We won't just take it for granted.
And I'll be back next season with more episodes. I promise.
And we're going to be bringing back some people from previous episodes who've asked to come back to talk about projects they're working on, because I think right now in crypto winter, it's time to build. It might not be time to shell, and it might not be time to sell, and it might not be time to show, but it's definitely time to build. So to all the builders out there, we hope that you keep building, you keep creating those back doors, because the people that went in. And we want to thank you so much again for following us through another season and another bunch of episodes for Not Another Crypto Show with myself, Jason Allan Scott, and my incredible co-host and host, Fiona Chow.
Thanks, guys.
Making a high-quality podcast like this one takes a lot of work. That's a fact. But not when you hire a podcast company. With our white glove experience, we handle everything for you. From guest outreach all the way through to publishing and promotion, we handle it all. You show up to hold great interviews and build relationships with your guests, and we take care of everything else. Podcasting is not just about the audience. Every podcast interview is the start of a new relationship. With a weekly podcast, you'd build relationships with 52 ideal partners or prospects through your podcast interviews over the next 12 months. Do you believe that 52 new relationships would help grow your business? We do. Contact Jason at apodcastcompany.com and let's talk.